a woman transmigrated into the interstellar world as the only vampire. To avoid being discovered, she disguised herself as an ordinary female, blending into the Beastman population. Until one day, for self-preservation, she bit and killed a male Beastman who tried to assault her, revealing her vampire form to the entire interstellar world. Her Black Wolf boss from the Arts Association, a top cat detective, the dangerous Blue Snake gang leader, the Snow Fox brothers, the Imperial Prince, and other powerful beastmen from various factions intervened in her life for different purposes. The struggle between these males dragged her into a dangerous vortex. When her disguise was completely exposed, severely anemic, she inadvertently attracted a group of top-tier male beastmen who offered their necks, willingly becoming her meal. However, at this moment, Lu Yi, wearing a borrowed dress that was about to burst, quickly took a shortcut home and hid in the dark closet. Feeling the confined space, the unique sensory control of a blood clan slowly faded, and her silver hair turned back to black. In the 3 months since she transmigrated into the interstellar Beastman world, Lu Yi, after experiencing 2 extreme bloodthirsty transformations, deduced that this body should belong to a vampire. But the original owner's memory contained no information about vampires. She searched for several days and discovered a terrifying fact. In the interstellar Beastman world, besides male and female beastmen, there were no vampires, not even bats. As a transmigrator, Lu Yi had no money, no power, no system, and couldn't even control her vampire form. Therefore, she could only live an ordinary life according to the original owner's plan, until tonight's school anniversary party. Due to overtime, she didn't get off work until 10 o'clock at night and missed the party entirely. On her way home, she encountered a male beastman in heat. Due to innovations in genetic pharmaceuticals, most male beastmen now rely on tranquilizers to get through their heat periods, protecting females from harm. However, this male beastman, clearly without tranquilizers, wanted to use her to resolve his heat. In extreme panic, Lu Yi lost control, transformed into her vampire form, and directly bit through the beastman's artery. When she realized what she had done, she was covered in blood. The man was probably dead. Lu Yi, with strained nerves, burned the dress and drank several cups of coffee to calm down. She didn't know the male beastman's identity, but if he was an elite or a noble, she might be imprisoned. She was just a low-ranking commoner. Thinking of those females imprisoned and tortured, she felt terrified. Lu Yi was originally an ordinary person, timid and unsociable. The unstable vampire identity made her even more panicked. Even a single life weighed heavily on her. After 3 hours of restless sleep on Monday, Lu Yi went to work at the Arts Association with dark circles under her eyes. As an intern, her job was to do miscellaneous tasks. The salary wasn't high, but it was enough to live on. After becoming a full-time employee, she would have a stable interstellar job. Put the files in my office. Yalin, the president of the Arts Association, suddenly called out to her, his gaze sharp. "Okay, President Yalin," she replied, but her heart was still pounding. Yalin's black, medium-length hair and deep facial features reminded her of last night's terrifying scene. "What's wrong?" Yalin keenly sensed her unease. Lu Yi stammered, "Good morning, President." Yalin's scrutiny made her uneasy, even a little afraid. The secretary reminded him, "President, you're staring at the little female like she's a criminal. Of course, she'll be scared." Yalin silently withdrew his gaze, took his coat from the door, and left. The secretary gestured for her to go back to work. Lu Yi returned to her workstation, bewildered, and started processing emails. Nothing happened all morning. Lu Yi was so tired she just wanted to paw on her desk and sleep. Not long after, she was awakened by the heated discussion. "Did you guys see it? He's so beautiful." "Beautiful, yes, but he killed someone." "Yeah, look, the blood sprayed onto the camera." Lu Yi rubbed her eyes and uneasily opened her optical computer. She was instantly shocked. The #1 trending topic in the entire interstellar universe was the video of her biting the Beastman to death. Lu Yi's mind went blank. When was it filmed? The angle of the video was like a kitten looking up, clearly recording her biting the man. If it weren't for the dim night, Lu Yi would have been wanted. Pale, she scrolled through the comments. "Female snake beauty, female tiger sister, only they have teeth like that, right?" Someone joked that beastmen in human form don't have external animal characteristics. "I suggest you go back to the factory for a rebuild." Another comment mentioned her teeth resembling a newly purified creature. Some even wanted to do anatomical experiments. Lu Yi watched all this, sweating slightly, her heart pounding. "Fortunately, my human form is completely different from my vampire form. She breathed a sigh of relief, trying to stay calm and safe. She drank half a cup of coffee, thinking, I absolutely cannot lose control and transform. Meanwhile, in the basement of the Night Howl leader's lair, a handsome man, Yu Min, stared at the short video on the screen, a look of curiosity in his eyes. As the video replayed, he felt an unprecedented attraction. The color of blood. A desire ignited within him. His body's reaction was hard to control. He had to capture this beautiful, bloodthirsty vampire. On the outskirts of the Koroyla galaxy, Hermok lounged on the sofa. Find the most valuable commission. He scoffed inwardly. Victor Watson, what a fool with money to burn. He accepted the commission and dialed the encrypted communication. He learned the silver-haired female's information but found no such person. His heart stirred. He proposed a price increase. The final price, 40 billion. Inside the Arts Association, Yalan quickly browsed through Fino's paper. Beauty kills. Learning that the police had applied for a joint investigation, Yalan realized the complexity of the case. As he examined the photos, he suddenly recognized Lu Yi among the timid, black-haired females. His heart skipped a beat. He called for the intern from the affairs department. When Secretary Burnett found Lu Yi, she was holding a stack of documents, ready to return to her workstation. Her thick glasses were askew on her nose, and her tired eyes held no aggression, like a pitiful little lamb ready to be slaughtered. Put the things down and come with me. As soon as Burnett finished speaking, everyone around them stared. What are you looking at? Don't you have work to do? Lu Yi complained inwardly. Ever since she became an intern, these people acted like they were on vacation every day. Put it down and let's go. Lu Yi said helplessly. As soon as she left, the office exploded. Is that the president's secretary? What does he want with Lu Yi? A promotion or dismissal? I think it's a dismissal. Would a dismissal require the secretary to come personally? She's playing dumb, right? Does she have a personal relationship with the president? What kind of relationship could a commoner like her have with President Yalan? Inside the office, Tao Ji sat in the best spot, smiling faintly. Hey, put my documents on the recording table. The male Beastman immediately went up to her like a lapdog. Sister Tao Ji is right. Just a commoner. What kind of relationship could they have? Too little work makes you all delusional. Everyone agreed, throwing documents onto Lu Yi's desk. Soon, they piled up like a small mountain. Lu Yi followed Burnett, her heart pounding. She didn't expect Yalan's interrogation to come so quickly. She chanted silently, "Don't be nervous." She held her breath as she pushed open the president's office door. President Lu Yi is here. Go out. Yalan's voice was cold and damp like the mountain mist, prickling her skin and making her tremble. Good morning, President. Lu Yi's hands hung naturally, far from Yalan. Yalan raised an eyebrow and knocked on the table. Come closer. Lu Yi hesitated, then lifted her half-lowered eyelids to meet his cold, gray eyes. Yalan was annoyed by her timid appearance. You've already graduated. This is the workplace. I'm your boss, not your fierce teacher. Lu Yi's apology was soft and aggrieved. I'm sorry. Seeing her quickly walk to the desk, Yalan was about to reach for a chair when one appeared behind her. Have you seen the video of the silver-haired female? Lu Yi sat down nervously and nodded. Yes. Your home is in the beer district, right? Yes. What were you doing Tuesday night? Working overtime. Working overtime? Yalan frowned. An intern working overtime? Lu Yi nodded firmly. Yes, working overtime. Yalan carefully examined her eyes, seeing the flames of anger awakened within them. Until what time? Past 10 at night. Hearing this, the anger in Yalan's eyes disappeared, replaced by disappointment. Did you encounter anything on your way home from work? Lu Yi shook her head. The murder of the silver-haired female happened near your home. You didn't see anything? President, I was very tired from working overtime. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and the dark circles underneath showed her lack of sleep, all due to overtime at the Arts Association. Her features were crumpled, like an easily bullied lamb. Irritation rose within him again. Yalan unconsciously avoided her moist, black eyes. He temporarily ended the questioning. When Lu Yi came out of the office, she couldn't help but duck into the restroom to calm her nerves with cold water. Looking at her different appearance in the mirror, her panicked heartbeat calmed down. She returned to the affairs department, feigning composure, and saw the even higher pile of work documents. She couldn't help but sigh. What's wrong, little commoner? Paper ball hit Lu Yi's head. George's eyes were full of contempt. Are you being kicked out or reported? My letter was intercepted. I didn't report anything. Louis picked up the paper ball and threw it into the recycling bin. It doesn't matter even if I did report it. Tao Ji sneered. I can introduce you to some underground work then, like page you or something. I told you. I didn't report anything. Louis couldn't help but retort loudly, but her soft voice lacked any deterrent effect. At this moment, she really wanted to transform into a vampire and bite all these workplace bullies to death. But it was just a thought. After all, when that silver-haired beauty appeared wasn't up to her. She sat back down, aggrieved, and continued working. By the end of the day, she still hadn't finished. She was annoyed and angry. She even wrote a complaint letter but didn't send it. Thinking of Yalin's condoning attitude towards intern overtime, she wanted to write another one, but she had no savings. The clock hand slowly pointed to 10. Louis finished everything and got up to go home. The lights in the corridor were already off. She pushed open the glass door and, in the dim moonlight, saw a figure leaning gracefully against the wall, arms crossed. Still working overtime? The voice was Yalin's. Lu Yi's body stiffened. Does intern Lu Yi know that working overtime is against the Arts Association regulations? Yes, Lu Yi certainly knew. But she also knew that this world, like her original world, was rotten. Status and position trumped everything. The damn regulations were useless. Why not write a complaint letter? Burnett will handle it. Lu Yi bit her lip. She didn't believe Yalin's words. Forget it. Yalin sighed, exasperated and helpless, looking at her timid appearance. It's too late. I'll take you home. Louis asked nervously, President, won't it be a waste of your time to take me home? Yalin looked at her rosy lips, his thoughts drifting to the silver-haired female in the video. But the two were unrelated. The beer district is dangerous now. That monster might appear again. He stood up, not allowing her to refuse. Go change. I'll wait for you in the parking lot. 5 minutes later, Louis got into his car and sat in the passenger seat as a sign of respect. President, I'll send you the address. He started the car, and the address was displayed without concealment. Lu Yi's nervousness surged again. Silence filled the car for a moment. Yalin spoke. The silver-haired female killed the male Beastman at 10:26 p.m. If you got off work at 10:30 and passed that road, you should have smelled something, right? Like blood, for example. The car stopped at the alley where the incident occurred. He seemed to be pressing her. Louis hesitated. I was very tired from working overtime. Yalin sighed helplessly and continued. There's no surveillance on this road, only patrol robots. Now we can only visit and investigate the surrounding residents. You're the only one who might have seen that monster. So think again. Suddenly, Lu Yi's tears fell, filled with grievance. President, I was originally going to take sick leave, but I ended up working overtime late into the night and encountered danger. She felt incredibly wronged and wanted to go home to her mother. You were sick and still worked overtime? Yalin looked at her and stopped pressing. Louis cried for a while, then wiped away her tears. Looking up, she saw Yalin so close to her, a handkerchief in his hand. The atmosphere froze. Her intuition kicked in, and images of the silver-haired female and herself flashed through her mind. Wipe your tears. He finally pulled away and started the car again. Louis stared blankly at the handkerchief. As the car drove away from the crime scene, she seemed to see a snake in the rearview mirror, but it disappeared in a blink. The tension made her shudder. Louis's home was an old villa hidden in an alley. Yalin's excellent driving skills allowed him to park smoothly. Just stop here. I can go back myself. He stopped her. Yalin glanced at her arm, as if he could still feel her warmth. Then I'll watch you go in. Louis hesitated. The car lights turned on. Yalin saw some color return to her face. Thank you for taking me home. Yalin tilted his head slightly, his tone arrogant. I should thank you for not being angry with me. She whispered, I'm not angry. Countless emotions surged in Yalin's heart. His intuition kept telling him that there was some connection between Louis and the silver-haired female. He watched her enter the house, and the intuitive suspicion resurfaced. Just as he was about to leave, his optical computer received an encrypted message. Hermock's exclusive logo was clearly visible. Interesting. Even Hermock wants to apply for a joint investigation. He opened the message and found a graduation photo and some text. President Yalin, requesting information exchange. Louis, an employee of the Arts Association residing in District P9, had a classmate party on Tuesday night. This party was fake. Someone was selling her out. Yalin calmly analyzed Hermock's bluntness, feeling a sense of alarm. His gaze pierced through the dim light and landed on the figure behind the curtains. Lu Yi's figure. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. Looking at the faces in the photo, he noticed the frail girl. Her pale skin and bright red lips made him suspicious. Yalan quickly retrieved Lu Yi's employment records and replied to Hermak, asking for his terms of exchange. Hermak quickly replied with the deceased's incident report. After the deal was made, Yalan received a new photo showing the registration information for the school anniversary. However, he knew there was no registration line that night. On the second floor of the villa, Lu Yi peeked through the curtains at Yalan's departing car, a sense of unease rising in her heart. Nightmares plagued her until dawn. Waking up, she tried to hide her weakness and prepared to go to her part-time tutoring job. Stepping out of the old villa, the smell of blood hit her, making her frown. She found a small golden cat lying under the flower bed, covered in blood. Despite her reluctance, she decided to help the cat. She wrapped it up and headed towards the backyard. At this moment, Hermak, inside the cat's body, felt the deviation in his route. But he needed patience to complete his plan. Suddenly, he saw Lu Yi digging something. His heart skipped a beat. He realized she was actually burying him. The kitten struggled to break free. Lu Yi, hearing the movement, hurriedly approached and untied the sleeve of her sweater. Hermak revealed his true form. Their eyes met. Lu Yi exclaimed in shock, Not dead? Hermak let out a helpless meow. The tense atmosphere made Lu Yi realize time was of the essence. She hurriedly brought Hermak into the house and started treating his wounds, preparing to go out. On the sofa, the seemingly weak golden kitten actually hid the identity of a young man. Hermak's head ached from Lu Yi's jostling. After stretching, he pulled out 2 gloves printed with banknotes from his pocket and put them on gracefully and quickly. He looked around. The villa's decor seemed precarious. The pale green walls, the light yellow checkered tablecloth, and the wooden retro chairs looked ancient and worn. He walked to the small coffee table by the window and found a notebook. Even in the age of optical computers, someone still used this primitive method to write a diary. His damned curiosity prompted him to sit down and investigate. 5 minutes later, he muttered 2 words: poverty. Lu Yi's situation was truly heartbreaking. Not only did she have no savings, but she also carried a huge student loan. Her monthly salary was taken by the bank, leaving her with almost nothing for outside activities. She could only work overtime at the association. Hermak found her diary entries to be inconsistent. The content would disappear after each overtime shift, and she would only write down her angry thoughts 2 days later, encouraging herself to endure a little longer. Hermak put the diary back in its place and continued to casually investigate the house. Except for the diary, everything was neat and orderly. Even the underwear in the closet was neatly arranged by color. He couldn't help but blush and his heart raced. He even forgot about the faint bloodstains Lu Yi had left in the closet. Just as he felt awkward and was about to leave, he suddenly felt a twitch in his forehead. His body seemed to be guiding him towards something. He immediately transformed back into a desert cat, jumped onto the windowsill, and noticed a strange flash of blue at the corner of the alley. Could someone else be watching Lu Yi? At this time, Lu Yi stood all the way on the bus and finally saw the giant snow fox statue of the Lin family. This family was extremely prestigious, and all positions were held by elites. However, the youngest son of the Lin family, Lin Che, was an anomaly. He had driven away dozens of tutors, and only Lu Yi had survived the death 30 days. She was too poor, so poor that even Lin Che's sarcastic remarks couldn't provoke her. As a result, after a month, Lin Che stopped tormenting her and actively tried to connect with her. However, Lu Yi remained indifferent, coldly entering the classroom and handing Lin Che a takeout order. Just then, Lin Che was watching the video of the silver-haired female and inadvertently paused on her thigh. Lu Yi was so nervous she could barely breathe. Her heart remained numb throughout the morning's tutoring session. It wasn't until she returned home and saw the golden kitten that she finally relaxed. Hermak, on the other hand, quietly observed from upstairs, closely following Lu Yi. He saw the kitten suddenly startled. Hermak's chance to observe had arrived. He waited for tonight's action but was locked in a small dark room by Lu Yi, leaving him looking innocent. Could he really be one of the 1 in a million people who didn't like kittens? He wondered. Late at night, Hermak turned the doorknob and quietly walked towards Lu Yi's bedside in the moonlight. Hermak confirmed that Lu Yi was sound asleep and quietly climbed onto the soft bed. However, the mattress was so soft, like a sponge, that his knee suddenly buckled, and he almost fell on top of her. He abruptly propped himself up with his hands on either side of Lu Yi's head, staring at her nervously, as if he had just survived a disaster. Although Lu Yi was still dreaming, her expression was uneasy, as if she was trapped in a nightmare. Hermok noticed her bangs were damp with sweat, his heart tightening. He reached out and touched her forehead. The coolness sent a chill through him. His hand unconsciously slid down her face, gently brushing aside the hair at her temples, finally stopping at her lips. He suddenly realized he had forgotten to wear his gloves, but curiosity drove him to continue. His fingers gently caressed her neck, which was equally cold. Is she sick? Hermok grew more suspicious. While thinking about these things, he looked up and saw himself in the mirror, looking like a pervert, lying on top of Lu Yi. Even he found himself comical and creepy. Just then, Lu Yi groaned in pain, and beads of sweat rolled down her forehead. Hermok subconsciously caught a drop of sweat. A sweet scent filled his senses, immediately making him feel something was wrong. He quickly left the soft bed, transformed into a desert cat, jumped back onto the bed, burrowed into the blanket, and snuggled against her waist to provide warmth. He couldn't help but pray silently, hoping she wouldn't really die. Otherwise, no one would be able to share the reward after he caught the silver-haired female. The next morning, Lu Yi was awakened by the warm blanket and a soft purr. She groggily lifted the blanket and saw the dead cat lying lazily beside her. She screamed in terror, shrinking back against the headboard, her heart pounding in her chest. I saved you. Why are you repaying kindness with enmity? Hermok turned his head in surprise and looked around, but saw nothing. He turned back to see Lu Yi fleeing the room in panic, her eyes filled with fear and disgust. Hermok then understood that Lu Yi was actually afraid of cats. Next, he was rewarded with a cat cage. Although Lu Yi tried to catch him while trembling with fear, Hermok couldn't bear to watch any longer. Pretending to be attracted by the cage, he voluntarily crawled inside. Looking at her tearful expression, Hermok couldn't help but think this female was strange. She was so afraid of cats, yet she still saved him. Could such a kind female really be related to that murderer? Lu Yi finally posted on AntelopeNet, seeking adoption for a golden stray cat. Picked up yesterday, slightly injured, 90% new. But the post sank without a trace. Depressed, Lu Yi collapsed on the sofa, rubbing her still aching head. She had dreamed of Lin Yu again last night. It was in a heavy downpour. He appeared before her, holding an umbrella, and gently asked, "Can I walk you home?" She refused and ran into the rain with her backpack. The next moment, a car horn blared, and she was hit. Lin Yu in the dream held a red umbrella, his expression morbid as he caressed her blood-covered face. Why didn't you wait for me? After waking up from the dream, Lu Yi couldn't help but open the interstellar network and search for the Lin family. The first thing that caught her eye was a picture of Lin Yu. Fox eyes, a high-nose bridge, white curly hair, and a red gemstone on his ear. He was a famous artist, the most popular unmarried male. However, these news and pictures made her sleepy, and she soon closed the webpage. Perhaps she had inadvertently seen his interview video before, which led to his appearance in her dream. After all, Lin Yu in the dream was somewhat different from the real him. Meanwhile, in his studio, Lin Yu angrily splashed crimson paint onto the canvas. It was an unfinished portrait of a young girl. He had successfully entered the silver-haired female's dream using his dream-entering ability, but the her in the dream was vastly different from reality, and the dream itself was very vigilant. He couldn't get more information. This made him agitated and frustrated. He knew he had to see her in person to regain his inspiration. Just then, Lu Yi's keychain mysteriously disappeared. She searched the entire room, a sense of unease growing within her. She decided to go to the crime scene to check, a hunch telling her there might be answers there. However, as she approached, she suddenly heard footsteps behind her. The woman, seemingly timid and bullied on the surface, was actually the only vampire in the interstellar Beastman world. Due to an accident, her hidden appearance was revealed to the entire interstellar world, instantly making her the target of numerous factions. To compete for this woman, various forces bared their fangs. However, at this moment, Lu Yi huddled in the shadows, the distinct sound of heels echoing in her ears. The footsteps stopped behind her. She stiffly turned her head and saw a pair of shiny, handmade leather shoes. She looked up and saw a man in a burgundy shirt standing before her. The collar of his shirt was casually unbuttoned, and a light pink scar marked his black leather gloves. "Miss, are you all right?" He reached out and offered her a piece of chocolate. "I'm fine." Lu Yi felt dizzy as she stood up, almost losing her balance. "You don't look fine." The man raised an eyebrow, placing the chocolate in his palm. "No, thank you." Lu Yi shook her head in refusal. Under the dim streetlight, She finally saw his face clearly. Short, blue-green hair combed back, sharp features, and deep eyes that held a hint of danger. The restricted area. What is a miss doing in a place like this? He gave her a meaningful look, his gaze falling on her bare neck. I'm from the Arts Association, here to investigate. Louis mustered her courage and lied. The man's lips curled slightly. This place has already been investigated by the Wei Mongxing Police Department, the Science Center, even internet celebrities and reporters. But I've never seen you before. Lu Yi's heart tightened. The other party was clearly aware of the investigation in the restricted area. The man gently lifted the red warning tape and stepped inside, his tall figure completely blocking her. You don't have a work ID. This is trespassing. His gaze was fixed on her. I'm an intern. Louis continued to fabricate, her scalp tingling. He took a step closer with every step she retreated. Her lower back almost touched the stack of cardboard boxes. The memory of blood flooded her mind. She trembled and instinctively covered her chest. Don't worry. The man raised his hand and held the cardboard boxes, separating them from her. I didn't say my investigation was legal either. Louis was stunned. The man bent down, looking down at her. If you're willing, miss, we can exchange clues. Sir, I haven't started investigating yet. She pushed him away forcefully. A chuckle reached her ears. The man took a step back and calmly withdrew his hand. Sorry to scare you. It's fine. I'm just timid. Louis responded in a low voice. This strange world made her uneasy. She mustered her courage and tentatively asked, Sir, what clues are you talking about? The deceased was a gang member. The man's voice was calm and deep. Gang? Louis's heart skipped a beat. She had to avoid not only the official investigation but also those desperados. She was really about to break down. The man looked at her nervous expression, seemingly intrigued. As for which gang, I'm not sure yet, but I speculate the deceased was after him. Louis bit her lip and repeated in a low voice. After him? The male Beastman? The man raised an eyebrow, his gaze lingering on her face for a moment. Then he looked away. Louis knew she had gained nothing. Just as she was about to explain, the man's expression turned cold, and his voice became icy. So, miss, what information do you have to exchange with me? I'm investigating, she stammered. Investigating? Meaning you have no clues. The man's tone suddenly sharpened, as if his previous gentle demeanor was just a facade. I said from the beginning that I hadn't started investigating yet. Louis raised her voice. You accepted the deal. You were the one who proposed it. Her hands trembled nervously, but she stood her ground. The man sneered and pushed her against the cardboard boxes. I think it's not too late to start investigating now. What are you doing? Lu Yi's breath hitched. She struggled desperately. The man leaned closer, grabbing her calf and lifting it, placing it heavily on the pile of cardboard. Lu Yi's eyes widened in terror. Her keys fell to the ground with a clink. The police didn't find any lost items, but clearly something was dropped here. The man leaned down, his gaze icy, closing in on her step by step. Louis remembered the missing pom-pom keychain from that night. Her body trembled instinctively. She saw the gun at the man's waist. A faint sweet scent suddenly filled the air. The man's eyes narrowed abruptly. He suddenly stepped back, fine beads of sweat appearing on his forehead. Louis froze. She recognized the scent. It was the scent of a male beastman in heat. Get lost. The man growled through gritted teeth. Louis was stunned for a moment, then reacted quickly. The moment he reached for the tranquilizer, she pushed him away with all her might and fled the scene. The sound of her footsteps gradually disappeared into the silent alley. Yumin leaned weakly against the wall and injected himself with a tranquilizer. Feeling the burning sensation below subside, he let out a long sigh. The snake scales on his skin shimmered faintly in the dim light until they finally disappeared. What was that strange scent just now? It actually triggered a beastman's heat. There had never been a scent in the entire interstellar world that could directly induce heat. It could usually only be induced through catalysts and therapy. That scent had actually awakened his beastly desires in just a few seconds. This girl must be hiding something. Yumin pondered. Could it be some kind of secret experiment by the Science Center? Or a new project by the Arts Association? He lit a cigarette, his gaze sweeping over a faintly glowing object on the ground not far away. Hey boss. A pained cry came from the communicator. Yumin frowned and asked coldly, what secret experiment is the Science Center up to lately? Let me think. Was it last month's biochemical agent case? That project was completely shut down after being exposed. That was a huge scandal. If it weren't for the recent silver-haired female attracting all the attention, the science center and the police department would be besieged by reporters right now. The voice on the other end was accompanied by sounds of pain, clearly undergoing some kind of torture. Humph. Yumin chuckled, his gaze still fixed on the glowing object on the ground. He then bent down and picked up the faintly blue, glowing keychain, silently putting it in his pocket. Investigate all the information on this biochemical agent case. Louis ran home in a panic. It wasn't until she reached her door that she realized she had lost her keys. This is really bad luck, she muttered in frustration, then realized, no, there's no such thing as Mercury retrograde in this interstellar world. Her eyes quickly welled up. The fear and panic from earlier seemed to erupt at this moment. Tears rolled down silently. She hurriedly wiped them away with her sleeve, took a deep breath, and quickly went around to the backyard, retrieved the hidden ladder, and climbed onto the second-floor balcony. No time to cry. She still had to work tomorrow. But there wasn't even any food at home. Louis clutched her stomach and slowly walked down from the second floor. She rummaged through the cupboards and finally found a few pieces of nearly expired cake. She stuffed a few pieces into her mouth impatiently, then noticed the kitten in the cage staring at her. In the dim light, its round pupils constricted slightly, as if curious about her disheveled appearance. Meow. The golden kitten meowed softly. What are you looking at? Louis slowed down, nibbling on the cake as she squatted in front of the cage. Meow. She tentatively reached out, her finger accidentally touching the kitten's wet nose. Goosebumps erupted all over Louis's body. She immediately retracted her hand. But the kitten didn't stop its exploratory movements. Hermok widened his pupils and kept nuzzling his nose closer to sniff her scent. Louis had a faint, sour scent on her, the residual scent of another male beastman in heat. She hadn't used the front door when she came back, clearly because she had lost her keys. Her hands were empty, indicating she hadn't gone shopping. So what had she been doing? Various guesses flashed through Hermok's mind. Meow, meow, meow. He cried urgently, scratching at the bars of the cage, trying to get Louis to let him out. Stop it. If you keep meowing, I'll give you to Grandpa Wolf next door. Louis muttered, threatening him impatiently. She wasn't joking. He knew she would really give him to that old wolf who hated cats the most. What a failed field mission. He had actually softened towards Louis. Now he was trapped in this broken cage, unable to even transform. It was entirely his own fault. The next morning, Louis wearily climbed out of bed and casually retrieved the spare key from the potted plant by the door, muttering to herself that she had to get a biometric lock this time. Before leaving, she couldn't help but look back at Hermok in the cage. The little guy was lying pitifully in the cage, staring at her longingly, as if begging her not to keep him confined in this small space. All right, I'll let you out when I get back tonight, she whispered and left the villa. When Louis arrived at the affairs department, she was taken aback by the mountain of work in front of her. This is too much. Besides Yalin's executive department, the busiest place in the Arts Association was Louis's miscellaneous department. She suppressed her anger and went through all the documents in front of her, picking out those that weren't within her job responsibilities. But as soon as she finished sorting the documents, a scornful taunt came from beside her. Finally can't take it anymore? Taoji sneered and casually threw a paper ball at her. A commoner like you should be working in a second-hand store on the street corner. What qualifications do you have to be in the Arts Association? Louis bit her lip, trying to suppress her anger. She slammed the sorted documents onto the table. Taoji's face instantly darkened. He walked over to Louis with a sneer and poured all the hot coffee in his hand onto her work documents. Louis recoiled abruptly. Her arms splashed with a few drops. The scalding pain made her frown. Oops, the documents are ruined. How could an intern be so careless? Taoji chuckled, seemingly enjoying bullying the weak. The surrounding colleagues jeered. Louis's chest heaved, her fingers trembling slightly. I quit. She suddenly raised her voice, a flash of determination in her eyes. Taoji's face changed drastically. Say that again? I said I quit. Louis grabbed the soaked documents and threw them at Taoji. Find someone else to do your dirty work. Janming. Taoji cursed angrily, but Louis ignored him, standing there with clenched fists, the suppressed anger threatening to consume her. Just as she was about to leave, a deep voice called out from behind her, Louis. Standing at the entrance of the affairs department was someone who shouldn't be there, Yalin, the president of the Arts Association. He had just called her name Louis. Everyone was stunned. A commoner actually had a connection with the president. She had only entered the Arts Association because of her exceptional grades. How could she be involved with a noble? Tao Ji pointed at Louis smugly and said, "Look, President." This arrogant intern not only ruined important work documents but also refused to handle them. What happened? Yalan walked directly to Louis. George hurried over and continued to complain. The documents needed by the External Affairs Department tomorrow are all ruined. We won't be able to work normally tomorrow. Can you handle it before tomorrow? Yalan glanced coldly at everyone. This is something everyone worked on for several days. We can't. Tao Ji feigned helplessness. The others immediately echoed. That's right. So many days of work. How can we finish it before tomorrow? Yalan sneered. Is that so? His gaze fell on Louis. The girl stood motionless. Then he said calmly, "Everyone, pack your things now." Pack your things? Everyone was stunned. You're fired. Yalan said emotionlessly. President Yalan, why? She's just a lowly commoner. Tao Ji was bewildered. You're abusing your power. Abusing my power? Yalan chuckled. This time it's you who are being bullied. Tao Ji's face was extremely ugly. He, a noble, was being treated like this. President Yalan, my father. Tao Ji started to threaten. Burnett. Yalan interrupted him and said to the other end of the optical computer communication, "You're promoted. You're the head of the External Affairs Department now." A busy sound came from the other end. Burnett was clearly caught off guard. Tell Tao Fei he's fired now. Okay, then what about your secretary position? Do your own job. Burnett hung up the call excitedly. Everyone froze, rooted to the spot. Get out, Yalan said coldly. Soon, hurried footsteps echoed, followed by a series of departing sounds. Tao Ji glared fiercely at Louis and spat. My family won't let you off. Then he left angrily. The affairs department became quiet again. Louis wiped away the tear stains on her face and bowed to Yalan in gratitude. Thank you, President Yalan. After saying that, she also prepared to pack her things and leave. Louis. Yalan's voice softened unconsciously. Pack your things and come with me. Louis paused, put the last pen into her canvas bag, and silently followed him. Her head lowered, her mind racing with 1,000 possibilities. Yalan stopped in front of his office. From today onwards, you'll work here. Louis's voice was full of surprise, even a little hesitant. I've already submitted my resignation. A new document from the Arts Association popped up on her optical computer. A full-time employment contract. Starting now, you're my secretary, Yalan said as he opened the office door and walked in. Louis stared blankly at the numbers on the contract. Burnett's salary was almost 4 times hers. She blinked, looking at the open office door, and finally sat obediently at the secretary's workstation. The call bell on the desk rang soon after. Come in. Last time she was here, it was for his interrogation. Deliver this document to the External Affairs Department. Yalan didn't look up, just pointed to the sealed document on the table. Okay, President. Louis took the document and left, quickly immersing herself in her work. Yalan then looked up thoughtfully at the crack in the door. Louis showed no unusual behavior. With such a personality, it was hard to imagine her killing someone. However, he looked at the surveillance footage on the screen. The timestamp read 10:05 p.m. Louis had lied to him. Yalan speculated that Louis might have seen the silver-haired female, but she was timid and afraid, perhaps threatened, and didn't dare to tell the truth. The silver-haired female in the video didn't look like the deceased's prey at all, but more like a hunter waiting for the right moment. Yalan was certain that this silver-haired female would hunt again, and Louis was likely to become her prey. To protect Louis's safety, and also to address her being bullied in the workplace, Yalan, on impulse, had directly promoted her to the position of presidential secretary. But this wasn't part of his plan. He originally only intended to transfer her to a department directly under the president. That day, Louis arrived at the External Affairs Department and met Burnett, who had been promoted to department head. Burnett greeted her with a smile upon seeing her. Presidential Secretary, please have a seat. Let me confirm the documents first. He slowly tore open the document bag. A few years ago, the Wei Mongxing Police Department suffered a major hacker attack. Hermock easily breached the police system and successfully blackmailed Chief Gil. After this incident, the police department stopped mocking the Arts Association and adopted paper-based confidentiality, starting to honestly use paper documents. All right, no problem. Burnett closed the document and turned to Louis. There are some secretarial tasks to hand over to you. Okay. Louis immediately sat back down. Her promotion was so sudden that she wasn't fully prepared. She had even looked up a secretary's work guide on Xinet on her way there. A large number of documents were sent from the company system, almost crashing her old optical computer. Louis looked at the red warning message on her optical computer. Memory full. Looks like you need a new optical computer. Burnett asked while recording. By the way, do you have a car? No. Then we'll assign you one. Wait, but I can't drive. Then we'll assign you a driver. Louis was stunned. This treatment was too extravagant. She hurriedly declined. No need, I can get a driver's license. I don't need a driver. Then your tuition fees can be reimbursed. There are detailed reimbursement methods in the work log. You'll need to get a flight license and a regular driver's license. Temporary call-ups? She asked hesitantly. Yes. Burnett looked at her with a complicated expression. President Yalin often goes on field trips. Most of the time, you'll either be seeing him or on your way to see him. Louis finally understood why the secretary's salary was so high. After the handover was complete, Burnett handed her a chip. Go to the logistics department and replace your optical computer. Okay. She bowed respectfully and turned to leave. Wait a minute. Burnett called out to her again, hesitated for a moment, and then said, actually, President Yalin isn't as scary as you think. Although he seems cold, he's actually an upright person. Upright? Louis nodded mechanically. I understand. I'll work hard. After saying goodbye, Louis's face gradually darkened. An upright person? If Yalin really discovered her secret, she would definitely be punished according to the law. After replacing her optical computer, Louis organized her upcoming work into a report and even studied on her way home. The secretary's work was tedious, but it was much more regular than the affairs department. She believed she would gradually adapt. Back home, she spent a fortune buying a biometric lock at the street corner. Although it pained her to spend the money, thinking of her increased salary, she still replaced the lock. After all, safety was paramount. She worried about whether that gangster-like man would appear again. After taking care of everything, at 9 p.m., she ate a simple meal and squatted in front of the cat cage, watching the sleeping golden kitten. He hadn't touched the meat paste she made in the morning. His quietness made her heart ache. Louis hesitated for a long time but finally decided to let him out. After all, he had cried so heartbreakingly yesterday. Gently opening the cage door, Louis reached out to pick him up. Don't wake up. Don't wake up. However, the moment her fingertips touched him, the kitten's fur stood on end. Sharp claws instantly scratched her snow-white skin. Meow. He arched his back and glared at Louis. She fell back, her arm bleeding. Meow. Hermock snapped out of his alertness and realized he had scratched the wrong person. His ears perked up, and his sharp pupils slowly relaxed. Oops, he had drawn blood from Louis. Just as he was about to crawl out of the cage, Louis panicked and shouted, "Don't come over!" She fled upstairs, even forgetting to close the cage door. Hermock guiltily wanted to follow her, but lay weakly on the ground due to hunger. His dignity as a beastman was being gradually eroded by hunger. What a terrible field mission. He, Hermock, a brilliant hacker, was now almost a real pet cat. Louis simply treated her wound and went to the bathroom, feeling wronged. She was truly naturally incompatible with cats. She soaked in the bathtub and opened Antelope Net, only to find that her previous post about the golden cat had gone unanswered. Just as she was about to bump the post, she suddenly felt a dryness in her throat and an ache in her bones. She was thirsty for blood again. It had only been 2 days since she last fed. Why was it happening again so soon? She got up and, relying on her remaining rationality, opened the small cabinet and took out a bag of spare blood. In the mirror, her features gradually became more alluring, and the silver at her roots slowly spread. Meanwhile, Hermock, after finishing the meat paste, was hesitating whether to apologize to her. A strange, sweet scent hung in the air. He smelled blood and went to her bedroom door, debating whether to enter. Inside the bathroom, Louis's weak voice came through. "Cat?" Hermock gently pushed open the bathroom door with his head and saw her soaking in the bathtub, her snow-white shoulders exposed, her black hair plastered to her face, her eyes filled with panic and unease. But her lips were strikingly red, as if blooming with the most intense color against her pale face. Hermock's gaze involuntarily fell on the scratch marks on her arm, the marks he had left earlier. A desert cat's instinct told him it must have hurt a lot. But looking at her reddened eyes and her expression of forbearance, Hermock felt a tightness in his chest. She was his prey, yet he wanted to protect her. So he carefully took half a step forward, then another half step, until he reached the bathtub and let out a soft meow. Seeing him acting cute with wide eyes, Louis's guard seemed to relax a little, and her tired expression softened. "I'll just assume you're here to apologize," she said softly, resigned. Hermock flicked his tail in agreement. Forget it, as if you understand what an apology is. Louis brushed aside the wet hair from her face. The little head rested on the edge of the bathtub, making eye contact with Hermock. How dare you come here? Hermock flicked his tail again. I saved you and gave you food. You not only scared me, climbed into my bed, but also scratched my arm. Louis's tone was accusatory, as if she wanted to vent all her suppressed emotions. She raised her injured arm. Under the dim light, the red and white wound made Hermock feel uneasy. He felt his head getting a little hot for some reason and couldn't help but lick his lips. You're not going to scratch me again, are you? Louis retracted her arm warily upon seeing this. Hermock realized her wariness and felt a little embarrassed. Meow. Imitating those pet cats, he gently rubbed his head against the bathtub, trying to appease her. The girl in the bathtub remained silent for a moment. The water rippled slightly, droplets falling onto Hermock's golden fur. Louis slowly reached out, tentatively approaching his head, but stopped just before touching it. Seeing her hesitation, Hermock proactively raised his neck and gently rubbed against her wet palm. Her movements were stiff at first, but gradually softened. The water rippled again, and Louis's other hand reached for Hermock's back. The fur feels much better than the nose, she murmured. Her soft little hand stroked inch by inch, gentle yet slightly clumsy, making his fur stand on end like a hedgehog. Hermock couldn't help but shake his body, shaking off the foam. When he looked up, he found himself involuntarily staring at the scene below her collarbone. Louis's snow-white peaks were covered in foam, her milky skin faintly visible under the dim light, carrying a certain inexplicable allure. Hermock's mind went blank, his body temperature rising sharply. He subconsciously took 2 steps back, his voice trembling slightly. Meow. If he stayed any longer, he was afraid he would really lose control. So Hermock quickly fled the bathroom and transformed back into his human form in a hidden corner of the terrace. His golden head hung low, his gray-blue eyes dark and unreadable. His mind was filled with the image of her snow-white skin. It's not the heat period, he muttered to himself. Although his skin was still flushed, he tried his best to suppress the image of Louis. Her expression, every little movement she made, was deeply imprinted in his mind. Hermock shook his head, trying to calm down. If it weren't for his concern about Louis being watched, he wouldn't have been so impatient as to come to the field himself. This was, after all, his first time leaving Weimongxing. Compared to fieldwork, he was more suited to remote monitoring and analysis. His thoughts gradually calmed. He transformed back into a desert cat and quietly returned to Louis's bedroom. The girl was already sound asleep, her sleeping posture still bony and serious. He leaped lightly onto her pillow and patted her face with his paw. Her body temperature was still so cool. He glanced at the bathroom, then patted into it. The blood bag Louis had used lay quietly in the trash can, the needle insertion point clearly visible. A used blood bag. Hermock paused, hooked the blood bag with his claw, and held it in his mouth. His pupils constricted slightly, filled with complex emotions. He swaggered out of Louis's villa and disappeared into the night. Hermock's departure that night wasn't without a trace. He simply transformed into a small cat, and after disappearing at the street corner, he resumed his youthful appearance. He deftly tucked the blood bag into his hoodie pocket and stood at the alley where yesterday's tragedy had occurred, his nose wrinkling slightly. A faint, lingering scent of a beastman in heat remained in the air. Although extremely faint, it hadn't completely dissipated. Louis had encountered a male beastman in heat here yesterday. This street is really lively. Day and night, it's filled with beastmen restless from their heat periods. And every time, their target seems to be Louis. Thinking of this, he snorted in dissatisfaction. Truly crude and foolish primitive beastmen, not even subtle in their marking techniques. Suddenly, he looked up and saw a small patrol robot silently recording everything not far away. Hermock smirked and raised his lips provocatively at the camera, then strode away. Not long after, the miniature robot's camera unexpectedly lost its signal. The next morning, Louis went to work as usual, but Yalin wasn't in the office. She took over all the day's work and, with Burnett's help, successfully completed her first day as a full-time employee. Burnett wrote in her handover document, "Although not a genius, she is diligent and capable of handling complex secretarial procedures." Good. Then there's only one last step left. Burnett sent her an encrypted address and explained, "This is President Yalin's residence. He usually arranges private meetings here. As the president's secretary, you need to be prepared to carry out his instructions at any time." Louis immediately noted down all the important points. Although slightly nervous, She quickly organized her thoughts. She noticed there were only 5 minutes left until the end of the workday. It was rare to be able to leave the office on time. Louis carefully tidied her desk and opened the office door, only to find her colleagues gathered in the corridor, whispering amongst themselves. She instinctively listened in and noticed that their discussions all revolved around her relationship with Yalin. I heard she was just a commoner intern, but President Yalin fired the entire affairs department for her. Really? How could a commoner make the president offend so many nobles for her? Someone said it was because she was bullied by the external affairs department head's daughter, and the president fired the entire department in anger. Someone added meaningfully, what are you all guessing for? Maybe she earned Burnett's recognition through her own abilities. Someone else retorted, what abilities? The gossip continued, reaching her ears. Louis's feelings were complicated. A strange feeling arose in her heart. Why did Yalin make her his secretary? Was it for some special purpose? But no matter what, the only thing she could do now was to keep this hard-won job. So she lowered her head and thought for a moment, deciding to sign up for driving lessons and learn how to drive. Back home, she found that the kitten, who usually clung to her feet, was gone. She searched the whole house but only found a narrow passage on the second-floor terrace. So the little guy had run away through this passage. The kitten ran away? Louis was stunned. She hadn't expected the docile kitten to leave without a sound. Although she didn't have deep feelings for the kitten, its sudden disappearance still left her feeling empty. Wei Mengxing was full of tall buildings, with no suitable habitat for pets. She wondered if it could survive in this cold city. Thinking about this, Louis prepared dinner while planning to post missing cat notices in the neighborhood tomorrow. Distracted, she accidentally cut her finger with the kitchen knife. Bright red blood welled up. Louis frowned and instinctively put her hand under the faucet to rinse it, but suddenly thought of a strange phenomenon. Yesterday, after being scratched by the kitten, she almost immediately craved blood. But today, such a large wound hadn't triggered any reaction. She stared blankly at the wound healing, a sense of unease rising within her. Was her bloodlust transformation starting to become erratic? Throughout the week, Louis was extremely busy, her mind constantly filled with various trivial matters. She didn't even dream when she slept. The kitten was still missing, and Yalin had returned to his elusive work mode. Her life on the surface seemed to have returned to calm, until the weekend when she finally had her first driving lesson. Afterwards, she stopped by the familiar alley and squatted down, searching carefully. She had lost a small pom-pom keychain here, but after searching almost every corner, she couldn't find it. Resigned, she could only give up, hoping it would reappear someday. She stood up, about to leave, when a man wearing a black baseball cap appeared at the alley entrance. The way he looked at her held a strange sense of familiarity. Louis's heart tightened. She immediately clutched her canvas bag and quickly walked towards the main street. As expected, the man followed. Her heart pounded. Louis gritted her teeth, desperately trying to think of a way to shake off her tail. She weaved quickly through the streets, finally turning into a narrower alley. However, when the man caught up, the alley was empty. He looked around warily. Suddenly, a large stone slab fell from the construction site above. The man quickly dodged, but just as he was about to straighten up, he was hit hard on the head. Sorry, a doctor's trembling apology echoed. In Louis's hand was another, even larger stone, which she brought down without hesitation. A fierce glint flashed in the man's eyes. A dagger slid out of his sleeve. Louis's heart skipped a beat. She gritted her teeth and slammed the stone down on him with all her might. The dagger flew from his hand. Blood seeped from the man's forehead, but he struggled to his feet within seconds, quickly pulling a vial from his pocket and injecting it into his arm. Seeing the drug taking effect, he lunged forward, grabbed Louis's long hair, and slammed her head against the wall. Louis felt the world spin. She instinctively reached out and activated her optical computer, triggering an emergency distress signal. The first contact, Yalin. Seeing this, the man sneered and plunged the dagger down without hesitation. Bang! A gunshot echoed in the narrow alley. The man's arm was pierced by a bullet. However, the dagger still pierced Louis's shoulder. Another gunshot rang out. Warm blood splattered on her back, followed by a sharp pain. She slid to the ground, her consciousness fading. In the blur, she saw a pair of shiny black leather shoes and heard a familiar deep voice. Why does everyone want you dead?